He moved like a shadow through a land that had not yet learned his name, across wild rivers and untamed forests, through territories claimed by no one and everyone. He walked, silent, deliberate, and free, not to be remembered, not to be praised, but to build, to create something that would outlive him, a settlement, a trade post, a city. If you've reached here, it means you've already liked it. So subscribe, like, and share it with those you love. Let's continue. His name was Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, and though history calls him the founder of Chicago, his story runs deeper than that. It is a story about vision without vanity, progress without power, and creation born from exile. It is the quiet story of a man who walked before there were roads and built a city before there was a nation. Before the towers and trains, before the skyline kissed the clouds, there was wilderness. The Great Lakes shimmered like silver mirrors, and the land was vast, ungoverned, and raw. It was a place of wind and water, and it was here, on the banks of a muddy river that met Lake Michigan, that one man saw something no one else did: a future. Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable was not born into power, or privilege, or freedom. He was born in Saint-Domingue, the island we now call Haiti, in the early 1740s, a world divided by chains and color. His father was a French sailor, his mother an enslaved African woman. He entered a world where his very existence challenged the order of things, neither fully accepted nor fully denied. A man between worlds. From a young age, he understood two things: that the world would not give him a place, and that he could build one for himself. Education was his weapon. He learned to read and write, to speak multiple languages: French, English, Spanish, and the tongues of the native nations he would later meet. He studied trade, navigation, survival. While others saw the New World as a place to conquer, he saw it as a place to connect. By the time he reached his 20s, he left the islands behind, sailing north to the French colonies of Louisiana. The journey was long, the path uncertain, but in the heart of the wilderness, Du Sable found his purpose. He traveled along the Mississippi River, trading with indigenous nations, the Potawatomi, the Ottawa, the Miami. They called him Black Chief and respected his fairness, his honesty, his understanding. He learned their languages, shared their meals, and listened to their wisdom. He was not a conqueror. He was a bridge between races, between worlds, between centuries. Some say he first reached the Chicago River around 1773, others a few years later. But when he arrived, the land was untouched, a meeting place of waters, where the river split the earth like a scar leading to the lake. Most saw wilderness. Du Sable saw potential. He built a home there, not a shack or tent, but a house of timber, glass windows, and stone chimneys. It was a statement: civilization begins here. Soon it became more than a home. It became a trade post, a meeting ground for voyageurs, trappers, and native traders, a place where furs, grains, tools, and ideas exchanged hands. And at the center of it all stood a man whose skin color made him invisible to history, yet essential to it. He didn't rule his land with force, he ruled it with fairness. People trusted him because he understood value, not just of goods, but of humanity. He married a Potawatomi woman named Kitihawa, and through her united two worlds that had long stood apart. Together, they built not only a business, but a community, one built on mutual respect, not exploitation. From sunrise to sunset, Du Sable worked his post. He bartered with traders from Canada, negotiated with chiefs, and hosted travelers. His home was known for hospitality, his doors always open, his reputation spotless. In a time when men were measured by their wealth and wars, he was measured by his word. But history has a cruel way of testing the just. As political storms brewed, the American Revolution, British expansion, and frontier skirmishes, Du Sable's settlement became more than a home. It became a target. He was accused of aiding the wrong side, imprisoned by the British, and stripped of his property for a time. Yet even captivity could not chain his vision. When released, he returned to rebuild what had been taken, stronger, wiser, quieter. He understood what most did not, that true builders do not need permission. They need patience. By the late 1880s, his post had become the lifeline of the region. Travelers, missionaries, traders, all passed through his doors. He cultivated orchards, kept livestock, ran mills. He brought order where there had been wilderness. And yet, as Chicago began to take shape, he remained unseen in its story, because history, written by others, prefers familiar faces. But make no mistake, Chicago began with a black man. Not a general, not a governor, but a trader. A man who saw possibility where others saw swamps. A man who chose peace over conquest, trade over tyranny, and creation over chaos. When he finally sold his property and left the area around 1800, the settlement continued to grow, first into a village, then a city, then a global metropolis. Skyscrapers rose where his cabin once stood. Trains roared where he once heard only the wind, and yet his name nearly vanished, buried beneath concrete and forgetfulness. Decades passed before the world remembered, before statues and schools bore his name, before people began to whisper, he was first, the first settler, the first entrepreneur, the first builder of Chicago. But Jean-Baptiste did not build for fame. He built for permanence. And permanence doesn't need applause. In his quiet strength lies a truth rarely told, that greatness is not loud. It doesn't demand to be seen. It builds patiently until the world cannot ignore what stands upon its foundation. To walk the streets of Chicago today is to walk through his legacy, though few realize it. The skyline, the commerce, the spirit of diversity and ambition, they all began with one man's belief in a piece of land by a river. And that belief came not from privilege, but from perspective. Because Jean-Baptiste understood what others did not, that freedom is not something given, it is something made. plank by plank, trade by trade, act by act. When the city he founded grew, it carried his principles without his name. Hard work, connection, inclusion, resilience. He built not a kingdom, but a coexistence. He lived in the 18th century, but his ideas, equality, multiculturalism, entrepreneurship, belong to the 21st. In him, we see the outline of what Chicago became: a crossroads of people, a marketplace of dreams, a city that never sleeps because it never stops striving. And perhaps that is his final lesson, that the hands that build the world are rarely